Here we're going to tie a little fly called Sloan's Mighty May. First thing we're going to do is add a black bead to the front of the hook. And we're going to take some olive thread. We're going to wrap it the majority of the way around the bend of the hook. Then we're going to take some pheasant tail fibers. You can use anywhere from 4 to 6 of these little fibers. We want to even up the tips as much as we can. We're going to tie in a very short little tail. The tail is only going to be about a half of the length of the shank of the hook. The tail on this fly is very short compared to a lot of other flies. We're going to tie this tail in so that it is about a third of the way down the bend of the fly. Bend of the hook, I should say. Then we're going to take our thread forward. And the next thing to do is we're going to take a little bit of olive or light olive, Life Flex, also known as Span Flex or Super Floss. And we're going to tie this in right along the side of the hook, and I'm going to pull it tight as I wrap down the shank here. Now, once we've done that, we're going to take a little piece of pearl crystal flash. I'm going to tie this in right at the back. Then I'm going to take some nice even thread wraps forward. And at this point, we can reposition our hook. I just had it positioned angled down when I tie in that tail. Repositioning it just makes it a little easier to work with. And then we're going to take this crystal flash and we're going to spiral the crystal flash forward. The first wrap is kind of the toughest. Once you get it going, you're going to want to make 4 to 5 spiraling wraps. You're going to take it just past the halfway point of the fly, and we can capture that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this Life Flex and we are going to wrap this over the thread body and the crystal flash body. This Life Flex is semi-translucent, so you'll get a little bit of that crystal flash shining through. That's exactly what we want. Then we can capture the Life Flex and then trim it out. Now the next thing to do is we're going to build up a thorax. We're going to use some Peacock Ice Dubbing. This can be a little tricky to deal with on small flies just because it is a very coarse dubbing. You can use dubbing wax or saliva on your fingers to really bind that ice dub to the thread as much as possible. And we're just going to build up a little bit of a ball for a thorax. That's about the size of our bead, maybe a little bit larger. Now, once we've done that, we're ready to tie in our wing case. And for our wing case, we're going to use a little bit of either turkey or mottled peacock wing. Either one will work just fine. And I actually glue, so I cut out this little notch here, and then I'll actually head cement or just quickly glue the tips of it to keep this little V to stay in place. If I don't do that, it will kind of all fall apart and come undone. And we're going to tie in a little wing case here that is slightly longer than our thorax. So you can see there that wing case is just a little bit longer than our thorax. It's exactly what I want. Then we're going to very carefully trim out the butt ends. And don't worry if you have a few frazzled little ends. A couple carefully placed thread wraps will get them mostly under control. You can trim out any shag from your dubbing as well at this point. Now the next thing to do is to tie in some legs. For this I'm going to use some India hen natural, and we're going to tie in some legs that are just a hair longer than our wing case. And the way I do it is I cut out a little V notch, then I just place them where I want them, and then I pinch extremely tight, do a loose wrap, and then tighten down. And what you should get are just a few legs sticking out of each side of the fly. And if you have one side that doesn't cooperate, sometimes I'll use my hackle pliers to just kind of force them up and into position. Then you can trim out the excess of your hen hackle. And all this is done with just 2 or 3 very secure thread wraps to secure them. Got to be very careful not to overdo it with thread wraps on this fly. Then the last thing to do is to take a smidgen of that Peacock Ice Dubbing again. Very, very little amount. Don't overdo it at this point. Usually what I actually do is I'll take out just a few strands, literally just 5 or 6 of these little strands, and I'll bind them to the thread and try to make that dubbing bind to the thread as tight as you can. Once I've done that, this is simply just to merely cover up the work that we just did and finish off the head of the fly. Once you've done just a couple wraps, you can whip finish. I whip finish right in front of that dubbing, right behind the bead. Then you can trim out your excess of thread. Now with this ice dubbing, it's pretty shaggy stuff. You can see here I have a few stragglers. I always clean up those stragglers. Any pieces that are facing forward you can trim out. And some of the longer pieces that face backwards aren't necessarily a big deal. Now the last thing to do with this fly is to add the epoxy wing case. I'm actually going to use a little bit of fly finish. You can also use clear cure goo. You can also use epoxy. Any of these materials are just fine for this point. And all I'm going to do is just add the material to the top of the wing. If I can just get it flowing here. Got to be very careful not to apply too much too quick. And I'm just going to completely cover this wing case, and I'm going to go up over the bead by just a little bit. I can see a little piece of dubbing here that I need to trim out. There we go. Then you can use a bodkin or a needle to completely cover that wing case and the top of the fly. And all that's going to do is add a little bit of a bubble to the fly, but it's also going to make it more durable. And then I'm going to use a laser or a UV light to just quickly cure that wing case. And once you're done, you have a finished little fly. This can be tied in a lot of different colors, a lot of different sizes. This is, I think, the original color, the most common color here, which is the Mighty May, the Baetis. A little green, blue and olive kind of color. Great little fly on all our tailwaters out here in Colorado. Just a great little mayfly imitation all around. And you can find the materials for this fly on our website, intheriffle.com. If you're watching this via YouTube, there is a link below this video in the description that you can follow over to the page for this fly, and there you can buy the materials for the fly and also find all the recipe information. And that is the Mighty May Baetis.